The grain ships arrived without ceremony. They came as they always did, heavy in the water, riding low against the dark current of the Nile, their wooden hulls groaning under the weight of Egypt's harvest. Sacks of grain stacked floor to ceiling in the black hold below. Rats moving silently between them in the dark. Constantinople was hungry, as it always was. A city of 500,000 souls demanded to be fed, and the empire had built its entire logistical spine around this single truth. Grain from Alexandria, gold from taxes, soldiers from the frontier. Remove any one pillar, and the whole cathedral falls. No one inspected the rats. To understand what was coming, you must first understand what existed. In the year 541 AD, the Eastern Roman Empire was not dying. It was ascending. Emperor Justinian I had spent 2 decades rebuilding the dream his predecessors had abandoned, the reconquest of the West. His generals had already taken North Africa from the Vandals. Sicily had fallen. Southern Italy was bleeding back into Roman hands. For the first time in over a century, the ghost of a unified Rome was becoming something real, something possible. Justinian himself was a man of iron patience. He did not sleep like other men. His court whispered that he walked the marble palace corridors at night, alone, a single oil lamp casting long shadows on cold stone walls, reading dispatches by trembling candlelight, his mind always moving. His wife Theodora, a woman of low birth and absolute will, stood beside him like a second spine. His general Belisarius, scarred from 100 campaigns, was perhaps the finest military mind of the age. The machinery of empire was turning. And then, from the grain ships, something climbed ashore. The first deaths were easy to dismiss. A dock worker found cold at dawn, a grain merchant dead at his table. A slave collapsed on the harbour stone, still gripping a rope. The symptoms were strange but not alarming at first. Fever, exhaustion, the desperate need for sleep that no amount of rest could satisfy. Then the swellings came. Hard black masses rising in the groin, the armpit, the neck, hot to the touch and darkening toward purple. Buboes, the physicians called them, though they had never seen them at this scale and had no word for what caused them. Within weeks, the city knew something was wrong. Within months, Constantinople was dying at a rate that defied comprehension. 5,000 people per day. Here is what the chronicles describe, and what no academic language can fully contain. The smell reached the harbor before you saw the city. Rotting grain mixed with something deeper, something that clung to stone and cloth and skin. The stone morgues along the city walls filled within days. Bodies wrapped in linen stacked against cold walls in the torchlit dark. Then the churches filled. Then the open squares. Then the streets themselves. Justinian's administration, which prided itself on Roman order, found itself paralyzed by a problem no legion could solve. There were simply too many dead to bury. The solution was grotesque. The great defensive towers of Constantinople's walls, built to hold armed soldiers against foreign invaders, were unbolted and filled with corpses instead. Bodies stacked floor to ceiling in the dark, pressed against ancient stone, the towers sealed from outside. The fortifications that were meant to protect the living became warehouses for the dead. And still, it was not enough. The dying did not go quietly. Survivors reported something that the Byzantine historian Procopius recorded with visible unease. The victims saw things. In the final hours of the fever, patients became convinced that dark figures were standing in their rooms. Shadows at the foot of the bed, watching. Voices from empty doorways. Hands reaching from walls of bare stone. Whether this was the fever consuming the mind or something the ancient world genuinely could not explain, the effect on the city was devastating. The healthy refused to enter houses where the sick lay, not only from fear of contagion, but from a deeper, older terror. The plague had found a way to kill twice, once with the body, and once with the mind of everyone watching. Then came the moment that should have ended everything. Justinian himself fell ill. The emperor of the known world, the man rebuilding Rome from its ashes, lay on cold palace stone, his skin burning, the black swellings rising at his neck. His court fractured immediately. Ministers argued in hushed voices outside sealed doors. Generals on distant frontiers received confused orders, or none at all. The reconquest of Italy, that vast, expensive, nearly complete dream, stalled. Belisarius waited in his campaign tent for instructions that did not come. Soldiers on the frontier held their positions and stared at the horizon, and wondered if there was still an empire behind them worth defending. Justinian survived. But the empire he returned to was not the empire he had left. The mathematics of collapse are brutally simple. An empire runs on tax revenue. Tax revenue requires living taxpayers. The plague killed somewhere between 25% and 50% of Constantinople's population in its first wave alone, and it did not stop there. It moved west along the trade routes like smoke following wind. It followed the grain ships back to Alexandria. It climbed the Roman military roads into the Balkans. It crossed into Persia, weakening both great empires simultaneously, leaving a vast power vacuum that future centuries would fill in ways neither civilization could have imagined. The reconquest of the West did not end in battle. It ended in an accounting ledger. There were no longer enough men to hold Italy, no longer enough gold to pay the ones who remained. Belisarius, that extraordinary general, was eventually recalled to Constantinople, politically undermined, his life's campaigns left unfinished on foreign soil. The territories Rome had bled to retake began to slip away, to the Lombards in the Italian valleys, to the Visigoths on the Iberian plains, to the slow, unstoppable entropy of a world the empire no longer had the strength to hold. What Justinian never understood, or perhaps understood too well and could not say aloud, was that the plague had not simply killed his people. It had killed his moment. History offers these windows rarely. A general capable of reconquest, an emperor willing to fund it, a sequence of military victories building genuine, unstoppable momentum. These alignments are fragile, dependent on 1,000 variables holding steady at once. The plague did not need to destroy the empire outright. It only needed to break the sequence. And it did. Constantinople would survive for another 900 years. The Eastern Empire would endure, reduced, transformed, something new and harder growing slowly from the Roman root. But the unified Mediterranean world that Justinian had nearly rebuilt, that singular, brief, fragile possibility of a Rome restored, closed quietly in 541 AD and never reopened. The grain ships kept coming. Smaller harvests, fewer ships, a harbor that smelled different now. And somewhere in the stone towers along the great walls, behind heavy doors that no one opened anymore, in the cold dark where soldiers once stood watch, the weight of what had been lost pressed quietly against the dark.